The second example of this that I find fascinating is the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, you'll hear a lot of other people say, well, Epstein didn't kill himself, or it's obviously this, or it's obviously that. I have a decidedly smaller interest in those questions. The questions that fascinate me have to do not with Epstein, not with who might have killed him, whether he died by his own hand, but they have to deal with the sense-making apparatus, that is the news media, around this untimely exit from our world. Now, Jeffrey Epstein was accused of trafficking and had a very bizarre life that is difficult for many of us to understand, where he got a slap on the wrist in Florida and appeared to operate with impunity even after his conviction in Florida as a sex offender. What's fascinating is that if anyone remembers the Watergate era, the news media used to go to federal agencies and ask whether or not something was true or false. And this gave us the phrase, a non-denial denial. When the question arises, let's say in this case, does Jeffrey Epstein have any ties to any known intelligence community? That question can be asked, let's say, to the CIA, to the State Department, to the NSA. And you might expect that you'd get an answer, absolutely, this person had no ties, because the idea of the intelligence agencies being connected to a known sex trafficker seems preposterous at one level. But you could also imagine that they'd get no comment. Now, we don't even have that in this situation. You can go, I think I did this fairly recently with the New York Times, and try to simply use their own search engine. Have you asked the question whether Jeffrey Epstein had ties to the intelligence agencies? The other questions that arise in this case are, where is the last known recording of Ghislaine Maxwell's passport crossing a border? This is a simple factual question. A reporter would be dispatched. They would call up somebody like Interpol. They would try to find out whether people would speak about it or not speak about it. Under any circumstances, they would be able to print an interesting story. For example, Interpol has no comment. Or Interpol says that the last recorded border where Ghislaine Maxwell's passport showed up was a border crossing in New York City. Under any circumstances, it is very bizarre to see the map of silence around these questions. Another such question is, if Jeffrey Epstein's fortune came from currency trading, where are the records from his office in Villard House in Manhattan? He had a very large office in a trophy property on the island of Manhattan. And to the best of my knowledge, I have seen no printed discussion of where the supposed trading records of this person who seemed to amass a fortune. Another weird thing about this fortune is that he seemed to live life as a high 11-figure individual, owning islands and incredible properties and multiple jets. And yet, all of the assets I've seen accounted for puts him instead in 9-figure territory. Now, that's 2 orders of magnitude difference. And I don't think that there are many 9-figure rich who would live anything like Jeffrey Epstein's lifestyle. It appears that most of the assets were put towards a kind of front, if you will. So we don't have any idea about where the records are of his trading. We don't have any idea where the passport of his partner was seen last. And we also have no confirmation that any of our major government agencies have denied that Jeffrey Epstein, the accused sex trafficker, was tied to any intelligence community. In all of those situations, what you can map with honesty and without having to go anywhere near tinfoil hat territory is that there's something broken with our sense-making apparatus. Because in the Watergate era, you could have assigned this to a cub reporter and they would have known exactly what to do. Where are our no comments on the record? No one knows. All right. In those 2 circumstances, that gives you an idea about how the DISC, the Distributed Idea Suppression Complex, works inside of journalism. There is some sort of editorial function that is keeping us from learning certain things because certain stories do not run. With a little bit of poetic liberty, this seems to be what Paul Simon was talking about in Sounds of Silence. What we're listening for now are the silences. Where else are we confronted with silence? What are the other things we would expect where we don't hear particular ideas?